She was poor and naive. He was rich. But that was never the biggest obstacle to the feelings he began to develop for her. The real pain came from the betrayal of the one she trusted the most. Ha-eun wasn't looking for love. She only wanted to survive. But when she met Jun-suk, heir to one of Korea's most powerful families, she found herself trapped in a world of luxury, lies, and promises that could cost her dignity. What was supposed to be a fairy tale turned into a nightmare of humiliation, manipulation, and abandonment. But fate wasn't finished with them yet. 2 years later, a new woman rises from the ashes, and he must face everything he caused to prove that love can still win. Before we dive into this breathtaking story, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments. Do you believe in second chances at love?
In the outskirts of Seoul, among narrow streets and buildings worn by time, lived Ha-eun, a 26-year-old woman who had learned early on how to survive with little. She worked as a housekeeper at one of Korea's most luxurious resorts, a place where the elite smiled while she cleaned up the traces left behind by their parties and excesses. Ha-eun had no illusions about that world. She knew exactly where her place ended. The top floor of the staff housing, no view, no luxury, no promises. But destiny rarely asks for permission. On a freezing February morning, she was sent to clean the presidential suite that would soon host the Korean CEO of one of the country's largest corporations. As she arranged the table, a man walked in unannounced. Expensive suit, piercing gaze, and the kind of presence that fills an entire room even in silence. It was Jun-suk, only son of Madame Yu, the most influential woman in South Korea and heir to UK Group. The tabloids knew him as cold and indifferent to anyone beneath his class. "Are you new here?" he asked curtly. "No, sir. I've been working here for 2 years." He looked at her a moment longer than necessary. There was something about Ha-eun that unsettled him. Maybe it was the fact that she didn't tremble in his presence like most did. Maybe it was the way her brown eyes met his, not challenging, but certainly not submissive. That day, she thought it would be just another awkward moment with a snobbish guest. But he was intrigued by her beauty and the way she spoke. And just as he was leaving, he said something that would change everything. "I want her to be the one in charge of my room during my stay." And that's how it all began. In the following days, Ha-eun was reassigned to the VIP wing. Jun-suk kept his distance, but something had changed. He began asking questions: where she came from, why she worked there, if she studied, if she had someone. She answered cautiously. She knew this couldn't last, but the heart doesn't obey logic. On the 3rd week, he surprised her with an invitation. "I don't want to dine in the hall. Have dinner with me here tonight. It's just dinner. I'd rather not eat alone. Just need some company. No one has to know." She hesitated. She considered saying no, but there was something in that lonely man, hidden beneath the power, that touched her in a way she couldn't explain. She said yes. That night, over imported wine and kimchi near the hotel chef, they laughed as if the world outside the suite didn't exist. He confessed that since childhood, he had lived surrounded by rules, contracts, and expectations, that no one ever saw him as a regular man. And for the first time, she shared about the younger brother she raised alone, her sick mother, and the fear of never being enough for anyone. 2 broken souls sharing the same table. But the real world doesn't wait long to collect its dues. So-jin, Ha-eun's childhood friend and hotel manager, had long harbored feelings for Jun-suk. When she saw the two growing close, jealousy and ambition consumed her. She knew that if Ha-eun captured the heir's heart, her own chance to rise would vanish forever. Quietly, she began to gather evidence: photos, audio, messages. One night, she handed it all to Jun-suk's mother, pretending to be concerned about the family's reputation. When Madame Yu saw the footage, she was furious. "A maid? This is disgraceful," she shouted. The next morning, Ha-eun was called to the director's office. There sat So-jin, the general manager, and Madame Yu herself. "You'll be transferred to another hotel outside the capital," the director said sharply. Ha-eun glanced at So-jin, who looked away. Jun-sok wasn't there and didn't know about the meeting, and that hurt more than the humiliation. "Does he know about this?" she asked, voice trembling. "That's none of your business," Madame Yu replied. Without a chance to defend herself, Ha-eun was escorted out of the building. On the sidewalk, backpack over her shoulder and heart shattered, she understood the message. She would never belong to that world. She left that very night. No goodbyes, no explanations. Jun-suk searched for her, but no one knew what happened. She had vanished, even from social media. When he confronted Sojin, she feigned surprise. She cried, said she was sorry. And slowly, she became part of the Yu family's inner circle. Sensing his loneliness, she got closer, trying to win his heart. Months later, she became his fiancée. 2 years passed. On a business trip, Jun-suk was sent to Jeju Island to negotiate the acquisition of a boutique hotel that had been growing too quickly. It was strategic, promising. Competitors were watching. Upon arrival, he was greeted by a woman in white, her hair in a neat bun and eyes steady and strong. His heart stopped. It was Ha-eun. More beautiful, stronger, more distant. "Mr. Jun-suk," she said formally. "Welcome to Haya Garden. I hope your stay is productive." He tried to speak, but no words came. There she was, the woman who once loved him and whom he lost through silence and cowardice. The reunion was quiet, but their eyes spoke, and deep down he knew this wasn't the end of their story. It was the beginning of something much greater.
During the first few seconds, the silence between them was like a storm held back. Jun-suk stared at Ha-eun as if seeing a ghost. She, in turn, held her posture firm, professional, as if this man wasn't the same one who once promised to protect her. "Are you the owner of this hotel?" he asked, incredulous. "I'm the manager," she replied, avoiding eye contact. It wasn't a lie. Although she hadn't bought the hotel with her own money, she was the one who brought it back from bankruptcy, renovated every corner, and designed the intimate experience that now delighted the most demanding guests. All thanks to an investor who believed in her when no one else did. But none of that mattered now. The past stood there, embodied in Jun-suk's presence, like an old wound reopening. In the following days, he tried to stay formal, attended meetings, inspected rooms, praised the service, but with every glance Ha-eun avoided, he felt the weight of what he had lost. On a rainy night, they found themselves alone in the hotel's tea room after the staff had gone to bed. She was collecting cups from the tables when he spoke. "I looked for you for months." Ha-eun hesitated, but said nothing. "You didn't want to be found?" "I wanted to forget," she said, voice firm but breaking. "You think I wanted that to happen? That I knew and accepted it?" "You didn't want to know, Jun-suk. That's the truth. When I needed you most, you stayed silent." He didn't know what to say. Back then, he had been pressured by his mother, manipulated by Sojin, buried in corporate commitments and emotional blackmail, but none of it justified his silence. "Sojin told me you left on your own," he murmured. Ha-eun let out a bitter laugh. "Of course she did. She won, didn't she?" "No." Silence returned. "Let's keep this professional," she concluded. "This negotiation ends in 3 days. After that, I hope I won't need to see you again." That night in her room, Ha-eun broke down. 5 years of rebuilding her life, and just one look had shaken everything. But she wasn't that naive girl anymore. She was a mother now, a woman, and she carried a secret that would change everything. In a small room at the back of the hotel, a boy named Min-jun slept peacefully, almost 2 years old, with eyes as intense as Jun-suk's. Ha-eun had discovered the pregnancy a week after being expelled. With no home, no support, and her name dragged through the mud, she almost gave up. but an ex-colleague took her in, helped her restart her life in Jeju. She worked as a receptionist, then manager, until she was invited to lead the renovation of Ha Garden. Her talent caught the attention of a Japanese woman who invested in her, no questions asked about her past. Now, Haeun had a new life, and she wouldn't let Jun-suk shake it. But fate doesn't obey human will. The next morning, Jun-suk saw her in the garden holding a child. Moments later, the child was left with a nanny. As he approached, something about the child felt familiar. "Hey, what's his name?" he asked the nanny. The woman replied calmly, "His name is Minjun, sir." Jun-suk froze. That name. Those eyes. Before he could say more, Haeun appeared, scooped up her son, and quickly walked away. Later that day, he waited outside the staff cafeteria. "Is he my son?" he asked directly. She said nothing. "Haeun, is he my son? You lost the right to ask anything about my life. I deserve to know. You deserved to defend me when I needed you most, but you stayed silent." "I was a coward," he admitted, eyes filled with tears. "But I'm here now, and I want to know my son." For a moment, Haeun lowered her guard. "Don't ruin the peace he has. He doesn't know who you are, and if you're only here out of guilt, then leave." But he didn't leave. In the days that followed, Jun-suk began to grow closer to Minjun. He played with him in the garden, told stories, helped with his toys. The boy grew attached to him, unaware that this was his father. Haeun watched from a distance, torn between fear and hope. The truth is, she still loved him, but the pain of betrayal was a wall not easily torn down. Meanwhile, Sojin discovered Jun-suk's business trip to Jeju. Suspicious, she searched social media until she found the Ha Garden Hotel page. Seeing a recent photo with Haeun featured prominently, she knew something was slipping from her control, and she wouldn't let that happen. On the final night of the trip, Jun-suk asked to speak to Haeun in private. "I'm going back to Seoul, but I can't pretend nothing has changed. Has it changed for you?" "It changed everything. You're the woman I should have chosen, the woman I should have protected. And Minjun, he's my son." She remained silent. "If you allow me, I want to be part of his life, and yours. But if you say no, I'll leave. No pressure. I just want the chance to be a better man." She looked at him for a long time, holding back tears. "I need time. I'll wait. For the first time, I'll wait." As he boarded the flight back to Seoul, Sojin was already preparing her next move, and what she held in her hands could destroy everything. But this time, Haeun was ready to fight.
Jun-suk's return to Seoul was quiet. During the flight, he replayed every moment with Ha-eun and little Minjun. What scared him most wasn't the past, but the certainty that if he didn't act soon, he might lose them again. The next morning, he went straight to his family's company office. But before he could open the door to his office, she was already there. Sojin. Dressed as always, flawless, elegant, cold. "Jeju did you some good," she said, crossing her arms. "You knew where she was. You always knew," he replied bluntly. Sojin didn't hide her smug smile. "I protected you. She would have destroyed everything you built. What I built without her is empty." She stepped closer, menacing. "You're going to throw everything away for a woman who ran off pregnant and lied, who hid a child from you?" "She didn't run. You set her up. You destroyed everything," he said, anger barely contained. Sojin stepped forward and threw a folder onto the glass table. Photos, printed conversations, supposed exchanges between Ha-eun and a former hotel manager, all fabricated evidence. This is what I'll release to the press if you don't come back to me. And I can do worse. Jun-sok looked at the material in disgust. You're sick, Sojin. I'm in love, and I won't lose to a maid. Meanwhile in Jeju, Ha-eun felt her heart grow heavy. She knew Sojin wouldn't sit still. Every woman who's ever been wronged knows the signs of fear. Sudden silence, suspicious looks from colleagues, and that unexplained knot in the stomach. Then came the subpoena, an anonymous report, mismanagement, embezzlement, forged hotel documents, all based on evidence she knew was fake. For a moment, the ground disappeared beneath her feet. The hotel was her life, her second chance, her name, her freedom. And once again, she was under attack, not knowing where to begin her defense. That same day, hearing the news, Jun-sok boarded a plane back to Jeju. Sojin tried to stop him, said the media had already been notified that running wouldn't help, but he didn't listen. He knew this time he had to make the right choice. When he arrived at the hotel, he found Ha-eun in her office, alone, the complaint paper spread across her desk. She looked at him with red, tired eyes, but said nothing. I know it was Sojin. Do you believe me? He stepped closer. I've always believed you. I was just too weak to show it. She looked down, fighting back tears. She forged documents. She made up everything. I could lose everything. Then it's time to end this. Publicly. Now. Hours later, the hotel's event hall had been turned into a press conference room. Cameras, microphones, reporters from Seoul and Jeju. Everyone wanted to know why the heir of UK Group was here. I'm here to clear up some lies. He began looking into the main camera. Lies that destroyed a woman. Lies I helped uphold with my silence. The room went silent. 2 years ago, Ha-eun, the manager of this hotel and the mother of my child, was falsely accused of a scandal. At the time, I didn't defend her. I was weak. I allowed her to be pushed away, humiliated, silenced. Now those same forces are trying to destroy this woman again, using forged evidence, and this time I won't allow it. He held up the documents. I'm handing over proof of the falsification to you and the authorities, not just to protect Ha-eun, but to publicly correct the biggest mistake of my life. Hours later, social media exploded. Jun-sok was claiming a child out of wedlock, denouncing his setup, and going against his own family. The internet was divided. Executives were in shock. And at the center of it all, Ha-eun, who, for the first time, was not seen as a victim, but a survivor. That night, alone in her room, she watched Min-jun sleep holding the teddy bear Jun-sok had given him. Then came a knock at the door. He stood there. If you still want me, I won't go back to Seoul. She looked at him, speechless. I can start over here, with you, with him. She cried, from the pain, the fight, and from finally hearing the words she had always longed for. You took your time, but I came back whole, and this time I'm not letting go. She hugged him tightly, and in that moment, everything that once hurt lost its weight. Outside, the Jeju Sea whispered like a witness to their new beginning. But back in Seoul, Sojin had not given up.
The hours following the press conference were a whirlwind of emotions. Ha-eun still felt her heart heavy, even after Jun-suk's public gesture. She knew how much it had cost him to defy his own family, face the media, and admit his mistakes in front of everyone. But she also knew that when you stir sleeping snakes, the venom doesn't take long to surface. And it did. That same night, while the hotel slept, a new article exploded on Korea's top news portals. Ha-eun, the ambitious maid who got pregnant by the heir to climb the social ladder. The article was cruel, filled with insinuations, old photos, and fabricated testimonies. Photos of her and her son were published without consent, and at the end, an anonymous source claimed to have proof that it was all part of a setup. So Junsuk read the article at breakfast the next morning. His blood boiled. He grabbed his phone, called his advisor, his lawyer, and his mother. He knew Sojin wasn't acting alone. There were hands behind that smear campaign. But this time, he was ready to strike back. Meanwhile, Hae-eun locked herself in her room with her son. She cried in silence. She thought she had already healed, that her wounds had closed. But they hadn't. They'd only been covered, and now they were bleeding again. Junsuk showed up later. He found her sitting on the floor, holding Minjun in her arms. He knelt before her. "I'll clear your name, Ha-eun, even if I have to risk the entire company. But you'll walk out of this with your dignity." She simply nodded. There was no more room for promises. She needed action. And action came. Junsuk went to the newsroom that published the article. He brought evidence of forgery, fake messages, manipulated contracts. He demanded a right of reply. At the same time, he filed a lawsuit and requested a formal investigation into the source of the allegations. But that wasn't enough. He went further. At the company's headquarters, he called a board meeting and laid everything out. He spoke about how lies were being used to protect outdated alliances, how the company's image was being weaponized to destroy innocent people. Some board members looked at him with disdain, others with admiration. We're no longer a rich family that does whatever it wants in the shadows. If we don't change now, we'll be devoured by our own poison. And with that, he walked out. That same night, Sojin received a subpoena. She was interrogated for over 7 hours. She tried to deny everything, tried to blame others, but her phone held messages, voice notes, screenshots, proof that she was the mastermind behind the entire smear campaign. When she left the police station, she had lost more than her dignity. She lost society's respect, her corporate contracts, and her public image. A slow and painful downfall. In Jeju, Hae-eun walked through the hotel garden with Minjun. The afternoon air brought a sense of peace. Staff and guests greeted her with respect. Now they knew who she really was, not just the heir's child mother, but a competent, resilient, and courageous woman. Junsuk arrived by her side, silent, as he always was when he just wanted to be present. "Did she fall?" Hae-eun asked without looking at him. She did. Hard. She took a deep breath. "I'm not happy about it." "I know, but you deserve peace." She looked at him. Minjun ran ahead, laughing. "Do you still plan to stay in Jeju?" "I want to be wherever you two are." Hae-eun smiled. For the first time, a light, genuine smile. That night, they had dinner together, as a family. No luxury, just rice, soup, and laughter. And that was enough. A few weeks later, the hotel received an unexpected visitor. Madame Yu, Junsuk's mother. She arrived discreetly. No journalists, no bodyguards. She asks to speak with Hae-eun. For long minutes, they sat face to face. The matriarch looked visibly more fragile. "I didn't come here to apologize, but to listen. Because for the first time in a long while, my son is happy. After you left, I saw sadness and anguish take over his life. And now I want to understand the woman he chose." Hae-eun didn't talk about herself. She talked about Minjun, how he wakes up smiling, how he loves to draw, and how he asks about his father every day. Madame Yu cried. Her eyes were moist with something rare, humility. "I raised him to be strong, and he became fragile. But you taught him to be human." she said quietly. As she left, she added only, "If you two ever decide to marry, let me know. I still know how to plan a proper wedding." It was her way of asking for forgiveness. The following month, Jun-suk sold part of his shares, launched a new company in Jeju, and moved permanently to the island's south. There was no formal proposal, just a note left on the table. "If you say yes, it won't be a promise. It'll be a real commitment. For you, for him, for us." And beside it, a simple silver ring. Hyun smiled, picked up the ring, walked out with it in her hands, found Jun-suk waiting in the garden. She didn't say a word. She just put the ring on her finger. And that's how, after so many lies, so much pain and betrayal, the truth won. It wasn't a perfect ending. It was real. And above all, it was true. But there was one more thing. So-jin, now alone, quietly left Korea. But not all sins remain buried forever. And in the final episode, something will happen that could change everything once again.
The peace that had finally settled over Jeju felt solid. The hotel was thriving, reservations were at an all-time high, and Ha-in's name had become synonymous with competence, resilience, and grace. Jun-suk was adapting to his new routine with ease. There were no suits anymore, no endless phone calls. He spent his mornings with Min-jeon, walked through the gardens, and enjoyed peaceful breakfasts. For the first time in his life, he felt like he had chosen with his heart. But every secret buried eventually finds its way back to the surface. That Friday, a brown envelope arrived at the hotel with no return address. It was addressed to Ha-in. The staff member who received it nearly threw it away, thinking it was just a flyer. But something about the handwritten label made her deliver it directly to the manager. Ha-in opened the envelope at the end of the day. Inside was just an old photo and a short note. The photo showed her smiling beside an unfamiliar man in a Seoul cafe. The note read, "You didn't tell the whole truth, and I can." Her legs gave way. She recognized the man in the picture, not a friend, not an ex. It was the former auditor of Jun-suk's family company, someone she had met only once, years ago, over a quick coffee when she was desperately trying to prove she hadn't committed fraud. At the time, he told her he couldn't help. Then he vanished. Her heart pounded. Who sent this? What did they want? And why now? That night, she didn't sleep. She reread the note dozens of times. The next day, she said nothing to Jun-suk. She thought maybe it was just an empty threat. But 2 days later, another envelope arrived. This one contained copies of old emails. One message showed the auditor suggesting a bribe in exchange for his silence about accounting inconsistencies. And the next message, her reply, "I don't make deals with lies. Say what you must." That message didn't incriminate her, but out of context, it looked suspicious. If released, it would appear like she had something to hide. Someone was trying to flip the story. Jun-suk noticed the tension in her face and pressed her. Eventually, she told him everything. "I never told you because I thought no one would believe me. It wasn't my fault, but even trying to prove my innocence with that auditor, it made me vulnerable." "And you think this changes how I feel?" he asked. "Ha-in, you're with me now, and no matter what they try, I won't stay silent this time." She wanted to believe him, but the threats escalated. Photos of Min-jeon as a baby were posted from an anonymous account. A hotel staff member was paid to try to copy internal files. A former supplier was bribed to claim she was laundering money through the hotel. This was an operation. Someone was determined to destroy her. And there was only one person who had the motive to go that far: So-jin. Even after her fall, she hadn't stopped. From abroad, she pulled the strings, using other faces this time. Old allies, paid reporters, internet trolls. But she made a mistake.
One of the staff members she paid changed her mind. Filled with guilt, she recorded a confession detailing times, dates, payment amounts, and names. Jun-suk acted again. He gathered evidence, hired a private investigator, and contacted the Cyber Crimes Division. In a short time, they traced the anonymous emails to an IP address in Singapore. Name: Sojin Kim. She was living there under a new identity, trying to start an event business with money she had embezzled before her fall. The news broke. The press, once skeptical of Ha-in, now rallied to her side. Headlines flooded the media. Ha-in, the woman who defeated the system. From maid to entrepreneur, a true story of resilience and love. Public opinion flipped. Women looked up to her. Entrepreneurs invited her to speak. She received awards, television invitations, and letters of support. But the most surprising message came from someone unexpected. A handwritten letter from Madame Yu. It wasn't just Sojin's lies that made me see who you are. It was your courage. Ha-in, you are the future this family needs. I don't ask for forgiveness, only that you allow me to be present. Ha-in cried reading it. A few months later, in a simple ceremony surrounded only by real friends, she and Jun-suk were married under a cherry blossom tree. Min-jun carried the rings. There was no extravagance, only truth. During the vows, Ha-in looked at him and said, "I'm not the perfect woman, but I'm the woman who endured. And today I choose to love you, not as a reward, but as a decision." He smiled, eyes full of tears. "And I choose you, the woman who rebuilt what I destroyed, the woman who taught our son how to smile." Their kiss was gentle, and the future finally felt clean. But their story wasn't a fairy tale. It was real. And that's what made it so beautiful. At the end of the day, as everyone said their goodbyes, Min-jun ran to his father and asked, "Daddy, aren't you going away anymore?" Jun-suk knelt down and replied, "Never again, my son. Never again."
Months after the quiet ceremony beneath the cherry tree, the truth finally won, fully and irreversibly. The international investigation, driven by the evidence and courage of Jun-suk and his team, led to Sojin's arrest. Captured in Singapore for fraud, cyber-stalking, data breaches, and embezzlement, she was deported and stood trial in South Korea. For the first time, she had to face the consequences of her own choices. The sentence was clear: 6 years in prison, no bail. And in the courtroom, Ha-in said nothing, but her silence spoke louder than any outburst. She didn't celebrate her rival's fall. She simply looked at her with quiet compassion, because she knew hatred always has a price, and sooner or later, the truth always finds its way back. Sojin would no longer be remembered for her elegance or success, but for the obsession that led her to cross every moral boundary. And her story left a powerful message. When someone no longer wants you, love is never won by tearing another woman down. Schemes, lies, and revenge only reveal your own fears. Anyone who must destroy someone else to feel loved has never truly known love. Back in Jeju, life was blooming. Jun-suk took on the family business with new values: ethics, sustainability, and inclusion. By his side, Ha-in continued as director of the hotel, now recognized across the country for her resilience and leadership. And Madame Yu, once distant and cold, became a present, affectionate grandmother. She spent her afternoons with Min-jun, teaching him how to read, how to tend the garden, and how to treat people with respect. Their bond grew slowly, but genuinely. She didn't seek forgiveness through words, but through actions. The family rebuilt itself on what was real. No flashy luxury, no masks, just love, hard work, and truth. Because in the end, it was love that triumphed. Not the romantic fantasy, but the kind of love that survives shame, betrayal and injustice, the love that rebuilds itself after everything has been shattered, the love that protects, nurtures, and begins again. This story is about loss, about pain, but above all, it's about courage. The courage not to seek revenge, the courage not to stoop to hatred, and the courage to move forward, even when the world seems to be falling apart.